All right, so this is the only thing we're going to do today. We'll go over these about 4 slides of notes, and then just make sure you do your vocab quiz. And other than that, you are done for the day. Nothing else. So light day for you. But yeah, so let's get started. So chapter 28, section 4, last one: human geography of Japan. So human geography, remember, deals with the culture and the history and the economics and the government and life today. It's all the stuff that people bring to it. So, uh, the first migrants that came to Japan were migrants from the mainland part of Asia and the other little South Pacific islands. There's numerous islands out there in the South Pacific, which is the Pacific Ocean that's next to Japan and um, Australia and Hawaii and Los Angeles, a big ocean there. So a lot of people came from just some of those small islands. They had very strong clans that were unified. So you had these families that all kind of lived there, and they were their own clan. And eventually they unified in the 300s by Yamato, and he was the first emperor. Um, and they were kind of like the feudal system of Europe. If you remember medieval times and the feudal system of Europe, that was the knights and the kings and the lords and the peasants and the nobles. If you remember that system where the king was on top, the peasants are on bottom, the knights are underneath the king, the lords are underneath them, and so the business people and merchants were underneath them. If you remember that feudalism style, the king, in exchange for protecting all those other people um, with his land and castle and those things, giving them land to live on, they had to serve the king. And you had knights that would fight to protect the king. Well, that's kind of what they had. They had shoguns. You had samurais that were like the knights that would help the landowners fight back against the emperors or fight back against other people to protect the emperors. You had shoguns, which were kind of like the general of the army, and sometimes the shoguns were more in charge than what the kings and emperors were. Sometimes they got more power than the kings or emperors, um, and they ruled the country for another 700 years. They began becoming a major economic power during the early 1900s. In the early 1900s, they started taking over Japan. They started taking, not Japan. Japan started taking over a lot of land. They took over China at one point. They took over other territory, mainland Asia, and so they became really strong. And they started to spread out. And they wanted to prove that they were strong and became an economic power and had a good army. And so they attacked the United States in World War II in Pearl Harbor. They sided with the Axis powers in Hitler and Germany and Italy, and so they sided on that side in World War II and tried to show their dominance and economic dominance and naval dominance and all the power that they had. But they ended up losing the war. We'll not go into deep about that. You'll get more years of that. But after World War II, the United States came in and basically took over. After we dropped the atom bomb on them, we came in, we took over. We said, you're going to be a democratic nation. We'll let you keep your emperor, but you're going to be a democratic nation that elects prime ministers and leaders. You're going to be a capitalist economics like us. You're not going to be communist. You're not going to be other things. You're going to be a capitalist. And so they were a lot like us. And so we made them a lot like us. And from there on, they started becoming another powerhouse after World War II. So most people live on the coast of the main island. Honshu is the main island. Most people live on the coast here. They're very big in manufacturing and trade. They manufacture cars and trucks and electronic equipment. A lot of companies like Toyota, Canon cameras, Nintendo, Asics, Yamaha, Fujifilm. A lot of those are electronically based companies, and they're very advanced in electronics. So they make a lot of these products. They import a lot of coal and petroleum, and the question why is, well, because they don't have a lot of that on their mainland, and they need power to power all these factories that they're building these things with. So they have to import coal and petroleum because that's what they use for energy. And they slowed down recently due to other Asian economic tigers as a competition, like Taiwan, like South Korea, like these other small countries that come in and undercut their prices and do things for cheaper because they have cheap labor. So these other smaller countries are kind of undercutting their price. Last two slides here. They blend traditional things of culture. They have very traditional type society. They're Buddhist. Their gardens promote building and harmony, and the buildings promote harmony with nature. You can kind of see this one. This building just kind of flows into the background. They revere their ancient style and their ancient history and use that. They have Western influence since the mid 1800s when our Navy came in to kind of show them who's boss in the 1800s. We brought in some Western influence like baseball. They have a big baseball program over there. They're in the Little League World Series a lot. Golf, soccer, tennis, they're all big in those things, kind of the Western sports. They've won the Little League World Series 11 times. I think that's the most out of anybody outside of the United States. Western arts, music, and clothing, they kind of look today. If you go to Tokyo, Japan, you're going to see a city that looks very westernized. It looks a lot like big cities in the United States. And last slide. Life today in Japan, they have a very structured education system. They go to school 6 days a week. Think about that on your quarantine. 6 days a week. They have 1,000 universities. They're an overpopulated country in some of those cities. If you look back on this population density side, they're very overpopulated in these black cities here. And so they're trying to become less crowded in that overpopulation that they have because they don't have a lot of land. They have only a certain amount of land in that island of Japan. And so they can't overcrowd there. But their population, you can see here, is dropping. It's a slow declining growth here, going in at every level. Why is it dropping population? Well, it's because the women are marrying later. They have more options than just traditional staying at home. They're working more. Men and young professionals in Japan they're very intent on working and not having children. And so they don't get married till later. And men and women both are working more than they are getting married and having a family. So their population is dropping. But they still have overcrowding in some of their cities. And this is a funny video. This is the Tokyo rail system in Tokyo. And this is their commute for some people. I don't know with the corona what it's like today, but it's very crowded on these subways. These two guys' job are to try to shove people into the subway cars. They're so crowded in the subway cars that their job is to push people in there. So that's just crazy that that's their job, is to push people in there, push people into those cars because they're so overcrowded on those subways. All right, well that's it. Do your vocab quiz. Other than that, you are good to go for this weekend. Let me know if you need anything. Thanks.